We're live! Hello, everyone, and welcome to the live show discussion for the Bane Chronicles by Cassandra Clare, Sarah Reese Brennan, and Maureen Johnson. If you are new here and did not know, I am hosting a I keep saying year-long in these live shows, but like there's only a few months in the year left, so it's like most of the year was gone by. But for the rest of 2018, I am hosting a read along for the entire Shadowhunter Chronicles. We've been going in publication order, and then we have these live show discussions afterwards. So if you want to find out more information and join for the last 2 months leading up to Queen of Air and Darkness, that information is going to be in the description down below. But for now, I have some lovely co-hosts joining me today, and we're going to be discussing the Bane Chronicles. So we can start off with some introduction and some non-spoilery thoughts. But just so you know, we are going to be talking about spoilers later. So you will want to jump out of here if you don't want to be spoiled later on in the live show. But if you don't know, hi, I'm Emma. I am from the channel emmmabooks. This is actually only my second time reading the Bane Chronicles. I've reread most of Cassie's books like at least 3 times. So it's been very interesting to go back and read the book for the first time since 2014 when I first read it. But I actually feel like I enjoyed it so much more this time around. I feel like as an adult, I'm really able to appreciate a lot more of the Shadowhunter world than I did when I was a teenager. So I had a really great time, and I'm really pleased with all the stories. So if Lauren, you want to go next?
Hi, my name is Lauren, and this is my first time reading the Bane Chronicles. I haven't read any of the other Shadowhunter books beyond this one, so I'm gonna read them eventually, but just not yet. I have a YouTube channel. It's linked below if you all want to watch it. I just have a couple videos there, so it's whatever. So yeah, I'm really excited, and some of the stories I didn't really like that much, and then some of them I was bawling my eyes out. So it's kind of like 2 opposite ends of the spectrum. So yeah.
Awesome. So happy to have you. And next we have Ren.
Hi. So I'm Ren. I make videos over on Ren on the Road about books and fandomy things. I've read the Bane Chronicles multiple times. Magnus is my favorite, and I absolutely love him. And when I actually got this book exactly 4 years ago today, we were just saying, and I don't read it all the way through all the time, but I go back to it and read multiple different stories and some of my favorite ones. And I just love them, and I'm someone that loves bonus content and additional content, so to have so much of that from so many different aspects of Magnus's life, I love this one. I gave this one 4.5 out of 5 stars.
Awesome. And we have finally Emma.
Hi, I'm Emma. I don't make videos on YouTube, but I do have a blog called emmareadsthings.com, and I also have a bookish Twitter and Instagram that go with it. And you can find me as Emma Reads Things pretty much everywhere. This is my 3rd time trying to read the Bane Chronicles. My 1st time making it all the way through. I've always given up in the past. And I'm glad I finally pushed through because I actually really enjoyed it. I was just having trouble with the first few stories for so long. But I love the second half of the book is great. So I'm really happy.
I'm so excited to chat with you all. So if you guys would like to ask any questions about some of the stories from the Bane Chronicles, you can use the chat bar on the side of your YouTube screen. We're going to be jumping into spoilers now. So if you haven't finished it and don't want to get spoiled, come back because this will be published on my channel afterwards. So I don't know, this is the first live show I've ever done for a collection of short stories. So I don't know if necessarily we want to go story by story, or if you want to just jump around. I don't know if we need the structure, or if there's anything specifically that you guys want to talk about. I know one of my first thoughts when starting the Bane Chronicles is how different Magnus is in the story of what happened in Peru compared to when we meet him in the Mortal Instruments, and even compared to how we know him in the Infernal Devices. I just think it's so cool how Cassie's really captured a person maturing over hundreds of years, and how his reactions to similar situations, like depending on his age, really vary. I just find it so fascinating, like thinking about, we're past, we finished the Mortal Instruments, so I can say this now. Like his breakup with Alec compared to his breakup with, I don't remember the boy's name in the beginning, but the one who's the musician. Magnus like goes out and gets drunk and like he wants to drink until he forgets his own name, and he handles Alec's breakup so differently. So I think it's really interesting to see like how much younger Magnus really does seem in the older stories compared to the newer ones.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
Okay. I like completely agree with you, because when I first started reading the Shadowhunter Chronicles, and all of a sudden there's like these characters that like never die and they just like age over hundreds and hundreds of years. I'm like, okay. So I was reading through it, and I knew that there's Magnus like in this book, and when I started opening the Bane Chronicles and I would see like the different timestamps, I was like, how does this happen? Like, how does this work? Like, people change. Like, I look at how I was like 6 months ago, and I'm like, oh my gosh, who was she? So it's just kind of like, how does someone change over hundreds and hundreds of years? Like, that doesn't even like come to reality in my head. And so I see what you're saying about that. Like, when you just like read the different stories and you just see how he responds, and it's kind of like, this is someone who's like aging and changing and isn't just like this kind of stagnant like character.
Awesome. I totally agree with that.
It's interesting as well, because it's the people that are with him, which is what makes it so much as well. As you see him growing as a person, but also the people that are around him, and being able to kind of see different aspects of that personality with different people, and people that we don't know in the Mortal Instruments, and we don't know even in the, I was going to say Dark Artificers. I don't mean Dark Artificers. I mean Infernal Devices. But yeah, so even the people in that, it's really interesting to see him change with those people. Even his reactions with Camille in the Bane Chronicles compared to his reactions with her in the Infernal Devices. And that I find really interesting, and kind of that growth in short spaces of time, but also within really extended periods of time, just with different people as well.
I totally agree with that. So we have a really good question here from Bobby Joe Walker. How do you feel about seeing Magnus in this book be in different relationships, and how this compares to his relationship with Alec, and how that isn't just another one of many? So like, what are your thoughts? Because we really do get to see Magnus, like we've only ever known Magnus and Camille and Magnus and Alec, but we get a lot of insight into his past relationships here.
I have a ton of, not a ton, I'll try to keep it to the minimum, but I actually have been thinking about this a lot. Like, I like skimmed through it today just like to like refresh my mind, if that makes sense. And like, I'm not a big annotator on books, and like there's like so many sticky notes here, it's kind of crazy. But I was like, something that really bothered me about Alec, because I liked him, but I just kind of also hated him a little bit, because he just ruined that relationship with Magnus. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you have it, and then you just play games. I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. So then I see like Magnus, and I'm like, okay, as much as I disagree with how Alec is going about the whole, let me take away your immortality in the, obviously, in like City of, I think it was Lost Souls. Does that happen in there? Or no, it was City of Lost.
Yeah, City of Lost Souls, because Magnus finds out at the end of that book, and that's when they break up.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Okay, and so I was just kind of like, although I disagree with Alec, I kind of can see the rationale behind that, because, he's literally like centuries old. How many partners can someone have? And so when I read the Bane Chronicles, it just kind of confirmed in my mind how wrong Alec really was, because Magnus, like every character, I think there's like, I have a sticky note about his relationship with his girlfriend Etta in like the 1950s.
Oh, I liked Etta.
Yeah, and he's like talking to her, and it says something along the lines of like, Etta had been going around meeting people who have children, and Etta had been like, talking to these men at the bars, but Magnus, like, she didn't even have to say it, like Magnus already knew, because you could tell it was coming. And just like the emotions and heartbreak he has to go through, like when one of his significant others dies or decides that they want something beyond him, like maybe like kids, or like to grow old together, like, that kind of thing. It's just like Magnus really does cherish every person that comes into his life, and he kind of like has a different side of him that comes out, and is a really kind of passionate person. And so it's just like, I don't know. I just feel so bad for him because, all these different guys, and he's just trying to live his life, and life happens to him and he has nothing to do to stop it.
I totally agree with everything you just said.
And it was nice as well to see the different relationships. Like, I thought, not that I was going to hate it, not that I was sort of going into it like, I don't want to read about different people, but I was so kind of like, had Alec in my head, that like, it's Magnus and Alec, and like, that's it. That it really, really, really surprised me how much I liked seeing all of these different relationships and the different times, and how, as we were dipping in and out of each story, how he had changed and how he was different in this new relationship and with these different people. And I actually was looking back in my copy of the book, because it's still got all my like original like annotations and stuff, and I'd actually written like, I enjoyed seeing him and Camille and they were together, and I didn't think I'd ever like want to see that or like that, but it was really, really, really nice to see it, and just to see him at these different times. And yeah, it was good. And even though now, like, as the sort of books have gone on it, I've still sort of just thought Magnus and Alec, but to look back and see those, I don't look back on it as like a negative thing. I think it's really cool, because I think ultimately so much of that has built up to the character he is, and how he handles his relationships now has come from this. So I really like it. I think it's really cool to see so many different people as well, and to see how he cares about them in different ways.
Yeah, I really like, I think back to whatever, I don't know which story it was exactly, but when Magnus and Camille are like at the institute, like that was so cute, like when they're like flirting together, like I never thought I would think of Magnus and Camille as cute, but it really does show that like there was something at the base of this relationship, even if it was long gone when it ended. Emma, what are your thoughts on all of the different Magnus relationships?
It's one of those things where it was kind of bugging me at first, and like, I cannot stand Camille, so I was really annoyed that she was being pictured in this like light, flirty way. It was driving me nuts. I was like, no, she is awful. I hate her. But then, like, I got past that. I really love the story with Etta. And then I love how, like, when you get to the end and you see Magnus and Alec more together, how, like, it is different for him, which just, like, solidified the relationship for me even more from the Mortal Instruments, because I'm just like, oh, they're so cute and so perfect.
I know. I totally feel the same way. I like the progression of the time across the story, when there's, like, we get so much content of Magnus as like his own character, but then we do get like the cute Malik moments nearing the end and stuff. So I think it's adorable. I think one thing I particularly like about the variety of Magnus's relationships in this story is that it I always find it really notable when authors write bisexual characters who date someone of the opposite gender, because I think it's so easy for people to forget that Magnus is actually a bisexual man, because we only ever see him canonically with Magnus with Alec in The Infernal Devices. And so I think it's totally, I think a lot of people probably like don't think of Magnus as actually dating women. And so I really enjoyed seeing like the moments with Camille, the moments with Etta, or even just some of the other women that are in Magnus's life, because he's no less bisexual when he's with any of those women. So I really like how Cassie like really reinforced that over time, and that was something that I really appreciated. So we got this question twice from two different people. What period in the Bane Chronicles, like what time period, was your favorite?
My favorite was my favorite was because the ones where they had the characters from the Infernal Devices, because I love both series, but there's just something about the Infernal Devices that just makes me want to bawl my eyes out all the time. It's just like in the best possible way, if that makes any sense. Like, oh my gosh, I just really, really detest it. I kind of feel like she's just like me because she's super curious, and so I know that my preferences about reading in those times is not like critical, like reader brain thinking. It's just like pure, like, oh my gosh, Steph is here. Like, it's just purely like that. But like my favorites and the ones I was probably the most emotionally invested were the ones where the characters from the trilogy that took place in the 1800s are in.
Totally. Ren and Emma, how do you guys feel?
I I really surprised myself because I knew before I read it, like as I got it, that they were going to be in it, and it was going to be Will and Tessa, and I love those scenes so much. Like when he brings James back to the institute, like honestly, like it's one of the funniest scenes. But the part that I actually really liked the most was when he goes to see, when it's the Edmund Herondale story, and we like really young Charlotte. She's like tiny. Yeah, like I freaked out so much when I worked out who she was. I was like, what? She is really cool, and just to see even further back, because the sort of furthest back we'd had at that point was Will and Tessa and Jem, and that was the thing. So this was actually taking it a step further and showing us kind of the build up to that, and we saw someone being stripped of their rooms, like all those different things, which I think it was just really interesting. So I loved that. That was probably my top one out of all of those.
Yeah, Emma, how about you?
I definitely agree with everything everybody said so far, and I love the internal devices, so any like little hint of that is great. But I also really appreciated the, I think it was called The Last Stand of the New York Institute, where it's like looking at the consequences of the formation of the circle.
That was a good one.
Valentine's build up to power, and I thought it was really interesting, and how like Magnus and other warlocks were dealing with that. So I really appreciated seeing more about that, because I think I'd read, I don't want to spoil anything, but I'd read Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy before, and that's the only other place where we really get to like see backstory on the formation of the circle. So
I definitely agree, because when I was reading City of Lost Souls, and you know the part where like her and Isabel are on this like journey together, and they're trying to go to see like the Iron Sisters and make these weapons and everything, and just throughout the point in City of Lost Souls, Jocelyn was just like, oh my gosh, like Clary and Jace, don't want them to be together. And in my mind, I'm like, what do you mean don't want Clary and Jace to be together? It's perfect. And so I just think it was kind of, I see your point, because when I saw like what had happened to her, and like how manipulative and violent Valentine was even back then, and like with Luke and all of like the OG squad, if you will, like it kind of clicked in my mind, like, okay, yes, Jocelyn is a little overly protective, but like she has reasons why. It's not just her being like, I'm your mom, do what I say. It's her being like, I'm your mom and I'm emotionally traumatized because my husband mass murdered all these people. So
Yeah, I totally agree. I think my favorite time period was in the story The Rise of the Hotel de Mort in the 1920s, because the 1920s isn't a time period we've delved into at all in the Shadowhunter world, and so like I just love the idea of Magnus running a speakeasy. Like that's so funny to me.
It's like the most Magnus thing.
So funny, and just like all the parties in his room, it's just so atmospheric. And like I'm not like a big historical fiction person, but I do love reading about like characters whom I have really close connections with existing in like my history that I learn about in school, like especially as it takes place in 1929 with like the build up to the Great Depression and like the warlocks being like it's gonna all come to an end. Like I find it really cool to watch like a character that I know very well and to think of them in like this period in time that was like really big for my country. So yeah, I really like the time period of that one. I would love more 1920s Shadowhunter novels. We have so many good questions. What was your favorite story overall? I feel like we like might have started touching on this, but what was your favorite, guys?
mine was probably the Midnight Air, mostly because I just like want to know so many more things about what's happening there. Like what's Tatiana up to? And like I just want to see Grace and James, and I'm so excited to learn more about that.
What about my Laurens?
my favorite story, like if you're just asking me like, Lauren, which one did you like the best? My favorite would be the Midnight Air as well, because again, my favorite team of characters were like together and it's just kind of like emotional. But my favorite story, like to talk about, I think, and to like think about late at night is what is it called? Oh my goodness. Saving Raphael Santiago. And the reason why, I know. And the reason why I love this one so much, because when I first read it, at the point, I read them in publication order. I didn't read them like City of Heavenly Fire then that. So like when I read Saving Raphael Santiago, I didn't have too many opinions of him. He just kind of seemed like this angst-ridden vampire that's trying to like attack Simon, and it was just kind of like, okay. So when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, like he's just trying to, live his life, and like, he just doesn't want to be a vampire, and he personally believes that like this is the worst thing ever. Like this is like awful for him because he's, having to transform into something that he thinks can't go to heaven, and that's just like, really distraught for him. And so I think when I read in City of Heavenly Fire, when he betrays Magnus and then he goes back on it, I was happy that he went back on it, but I was also angry that he even was going to do it in the first place. Like I was angry, like why wasn't your gut reaction to go back to Magnus? But then when I was skimming through them just now, I saw that he was talking about how he already felt damned anyway, and that it didn't matter what God wanted him to do, and that he was just going to do whatever he wanted to do at this point, and that no one was going to stop him. And so I think Raphael, deep down, is a good person. It's just like, he just is just kind of like, well, there's nothing I can do anymore, so I'm designed at this point to be a sinful, demonic being, so might as well just embrace that and be that, because he feels like he doesn't have any other choices.
Yeah, I think that there's so much development and expansion on Raphael's character, and that one, like how he is like starving himself and forcing himself to run on hallowed ground over and over and over again to protect his family, because like he wants to know that like he has so much self-control and he's so strong-willed. And I think that's things that are really overlooked, because in the moral influence, the only real perspective we have of him is that like he's an asshole to Simon. I think like if you really want to understand Raphael Santiago, you have to read his story, because there's so much to him that is really underrated and often forgotten about.
I just want to like hold him and be like, I'm so sorry this happened to you. Oh my goodness. Oh, what
I like totally agree with those. There's just so many that are good, and I think if I go in with like my critical like review brain, like what is good for the story, what gives us more information, then I'm gonna go with what I said before, the vampire scones and Edmund Herondale, just because of the content. But if I'm going in with like my like just fangirling over Magnus and his life like brain, then just the one where the what to buy the shadow hunter who has everything and who you're not officially dating anyway. Just because like all of these stories, and they were just like different times and different emotions, and gave me different content, and then I got to it and it was just so sweet, because he has this demon in his like apartment that he's just freaking out, and he's just annoying it, and he's just calling all these people and they're just hanging up on him because they're like, just stop it. But then what he actually does, what he does like for Isabel, it's kind of like a subtle thing that will help, that will be something Alec will appreciate because it's protecting her. And then just that last line where Alec's just like, I can't believe you remembered, like thanks for remembering and so, and it's just so sweet. So I think
so sweet.
Fangirl wise, I'm going to go down that way. But critical wise, Edmund Herondale, because that was really interesting.
You're so right about the Edmund Herondale one, because you get to see like something that I think is super interesting is seeing like the political progression of the Shadowhunter world and how they interact with Downworlders. Like we go from Edmund Herondale, where they're like, stripping the runes off of you if you don't want to be with someone that's a Shadowhunter, and breaking the plates off of that the Downworlders eat off of, and like even before them, when they're like, what were they called again? Where they like they kill the Downworlders and they would like collect the remains.
Oh, spoils.
Yeah. And so like you go from like that, which is just so like mortifying, into like now, well actually I don't know now because I haven't read the Dark Artifices, but now up until this point where we're having like Downworlders like on the council and like serving the clave and like all this kind of stuff. And I think it's really interesting because Cassandra Clare made something that is fantastical and not real into something that represents, I think, something that is real. Because if you notice, like, obviously I don't want to speak on something that I don't know 100% about, but like in history, like women were persecuted, like, people of color, people of non-heterosexual sexualities, like just various different people groups. And now we come to like history now, and it's like all these different kind of people are represented, and it's just kind of like pushing forward, and like, you know, it's like, how far can we take it? And so I think what I like about Cassandra Clare is that she doesn't just like, oh yeah, my shadow hunters, we were always perfect and we never were wrong, and we never were like, you know, messed up. Like, usually it shows like, hey, this is how it was and we messed up, but now we're working on it and we're getting better. And I think that's all you can really ask of society to do.
Totally. I totally agree. Emma, how about you? Which one was your favorite?
I think I already said it. It was The Midnight Air.
The Midnight Air, right.
Yeah.
I think it's hard for me because, like, I feel like I don't have, like, one favorite. I just have ones that hit me really hard. And I think one that, like, really hit me is The Fall of the Hotel d'Amour, where Camille and all the vampires become addicted to, I think it's cocaine. And just Magnus having Katerina erase his memory because he doesn't want to remember Camille like this just broke me. Like, I completely forgot about this, and it was like such an emotionally heavy story for Magnus that it really stood out to me when I like completely skipped. Like, I didn't skip it when I first read it, but I like didn't care for it when I first read it. And I think this time around it like really like hit me like this is some deep stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
That's really true.
Let's see what other questions. We have so many good questions. Oh, I just saw a good one and I skipped it. Did this book change your opinion on Magnus as a character? From Jode. Or do you feel like you loved him as much as you loved him in the beginning? Or we could even expand it like, did this book make you think differently of any characters, period?
It definitely caused me to see things a lot differently. I'll just name off like maybe like my top 3, just like rapid fire Lauren opinions change moment. Magnus, it made me change because I just kind of see, up until this point, I kind of saw Magnus as like the warlock friend that they just kind of took. I don't want to say take advantage of because that sounds kind of rude, but Magnus is just like always there to like help them, and I was just kind of like, I like to see why he is so like willing to help all the time, and like why he has such a liking for Alec. And now that I read this book, I kind of can see Magnus's mindset. It changed my opinion on Jocelyn from just being kind of like this really overly cautious mom to like being someone who like actually like was really, really scarred from her experiences. It changed my opinion on Alec because at first I liked Alec. I just kind of resented him a little bit because of how he treated Magnus and how he treated Clary in the beginning of the series. And it was just kind of like towards the end when they talked about like the relationship, I could see like this is why Magnus likes him. Like, this is what's good and wholesome about Alec. So when I went to Sydney Heaven and Fire, I like liked him a little more. And it also changed my opinions on Tessa and Will and Jim a little bit, because when I was reading about them in The Midnight Air, and I like was reading about like Tessa and Will as like adults and parents, it was just kind of weird because I'm like, what do you mean they're like 40? They're like 16, calm down. But they're actually like adults. And so it was like, I think James, their son, was talking about how their dad and their mom had told them stories about like when they were younger and like when they, you know, did all the things that happened in the Infernal Devices. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I know older people who tell me stories that happened in their like younger days. And it's just kind of like, as a younger person, you know, things like that are kind of eye-opening for me because I'm still 16. I'm still kind of like figuring it out. And so reading like about adults like that and seeing how they changed kind of makes sense to me.
That's awesome.
Sorry, I'm like rambling on so much.
No, I love all of your analyses. They're so fascinating. I love it.
Thank you.
What were you gonna say?
I'd say it didn't really change my opinion of Magnus. It just kind of strengthened it. Like the Mortal Instruments series, just like the original series, was kind of like the first like book with LGBT characters in it, and particularly Magnus. Like I just very much was gravitated towards. Like I've always loved him, and it was just kind of like the first time seeing that representation, and I was like, oh my god! Like so, like I've always loved him. So going into this, when I found out this was going to be a thing, I was just freaking out the whole time, and just seeing more of his story was going to be amazing. And then when I finally was able to read it, just kind of it didn't change my opinion, it just strengthened it in different areas to see how he was different. Like I said before, kind of it made me feel more for him, but in a really good way. Like felt so much more to see what he'd been through over the years and the struggles that he'd had through different things. And like you said before, seeing different relationships of him with dating girls as well, and kind of that not being erased, like, because I think, like you said, people don't see him as bisexual because we only sort of know him with Alex. So to see that and to see all those different things, it was just, I just loved it. Like, it just strengthened everything I knew about it, and just having more content for Magnus was just, it was just brilliant. And I just love him even more. I feel like I understand him more as well, which I think is really important, because I sort of came away from this book feeling really like I just dug into his life, which was really good.
I love that there's so much to talk about. Like, oh my goodness, everything in this book is just like, oh yeah, this also relates to this other book in this one scene. I just love how like it always just like everything ranges over the entire series. Like, it's like you get Magnus at all different points, and it's just kind of really cool. I don't know.
Yeah, I like that Magnus is like the one character that we'll have throughout every series.
Yeah,
just so awesome. I think as for characters that like my opinions were changed by reading this book, I definitely say Raphael, because I feel like he's just so much more likable than I ever thought, and like so much of what he does in the Mortal Instruments is like defined by how we know him in Saving Rafael Santiago. So I really like have a greater compassion for him as a character. I'd also say I wouldn't necessarily say my opinion has changed on Camille, because like I still hate her. Like, she's still a terrible, terrible person. But I like that we do get more layers to her. You know, she's just always viewed as like this cold-hearted bitch. And I mean, like, she is. But like, she also has, you know, her own inner demons. She has her own things that she goes through. And so I really liked seeing that. So like, I wouldn't say that like I like her more than I did, but like Brent said, like I understand her more, which I think is great. And I also, you know, I've always loved Magnus, but like this book really does have a greater understanding of Magnus, and like how he really is just drawn to broken people that he wants to fix. He is just like such a helper. And I love like seeing how, although like we said, he matures and changes throughout the series, he also has like things that are in his core that stand throughout time, which I think is really cool. Let me check some more questions. Oh, I wanted to ask, what is your least favorite novella that's in here?
I don't like to like hate on books, because I feel like every book is like up for interpretation, and I might hate it, but you might love it, or like vice versa, you know, kind of thing. I had just finished reading, I was at the beach, and I just finished reading Clockwork Princess, so I'm like, you know, just like completely distraught with emotions, and just super, super like into that universe. And then I'm like, okay, sure, like the Bane Chronicles is like a nice transition to get me into Save Heavenly Fire, because we got Magnus, he's in both series, and like it's just like a cute little like short story moment. And then I got to very first one, which was what really happened in Peru, and I was like, oh, I kind of always wondered that. Like, sure. Like, I was so upset with that. I was like, are all of them going to be this way? I was just so upset. And then, like, after that, it was fine. After that, I liked them. But, like, the first one, I was just like, why did I read this? What happened here?
I would say, Ren, we're talking about our least favorite novella.
Okay, cool. I just totally missed the question.
I would say that my least favorite is probably The Runaway Queen, because
I can see why you don't like that one.
I liked it. You know, I don't think it's terrible. I just like, I don't know. I feel like I've locked myself into this box of like caring most when it has to do with characters that like I already know. And so, I mean, like, it's definitely natural for me to enjoy ones that, like, have characters that I also love. But I do feel like sometimes, like, I might have, like, placed myself in this headspace where just, like, the other ones aren't that interesting to me, even though they're still valuable. But yeah, I was never as interested in this one as the rest of them, personally.
I feel the same way about The Runaway Queen. And also, like as someone who reads a lot of historical fiction, I've read quite a few stories that take place during the French Revolution. And I felt like this one was just kind of meh. Like it didn't really address all of the issues going on politically. It kind of did, but not that much. And it didn't have any of my favorite characters from other stories. So it just kind of falls flat for me compared to all of the others. That being said, I still enjoyed it. It was fine.
Yeah,
but
it was
the
fine.
others a lot better.
And Ren, which one was your least favorite?
Mine is exactly the same for the same.
Oh my gosh!
Literally for the same reasons. It felt like the one that didn't fit.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it just doesn't feel like it's part. Like I know they're all different stories set in different times anyway, but it just felt like it wasn't part of it. It was just kind of like a random little one, and it was funny. Like there were bits of it that were funny, and like it was a good mental picture when they're in this air balloon. It's ridiculous, but yeah, it just didn't feel like as involved as the other ones. So,
Totally.
yeah, that one too. Yeah.
It's actually, that made me think of, this is probably more of a discussion for Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy, but there's no spoilers here. I think it's interesting how like the first novella bind up really is like snapshots of different moments in Magnus's life, whereas Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy and Ghost from the Shadow Market do have an interwoven plot that is like still a part of the series, if anyone has read it. So I find that interesting that
Cool.
Cassie's method of writing the novellas has changed, and she's like, I want to make these fit together more compared to the Bane Chronicles, which really are just like little anecdotes and stuff that are still enjoyable, but the one connecting theme is Magnus, whereas there are other themes in the other novellas, which is interesting. Let's see. How do you guys feel about Katarina Loss and Ragnar? Because those are side characters that we know, but because they're longtime friends of Magnus, we do see a lot more of them in this particular book. So what did you guys think of their parts?
I just want to like take both of them home and have like a sleepover and talk about old like warlock stories with them. Like, okay, with Ragnar, when he dies in City of Glass, I was just kind of like, okay, like I didn't really care that much because I'm like, I never heard of this dude until just now, and all of a sudden he's dead. And then I read the Bane Chronicles, and Ragnar's just kind of like this little like green little friend who follows him around and talks and everything, and he's like the pinnacle like grumpy old granddad. And so I don't know why, I just like think that people like that are just really cute, and like I don't know. And then like she like Katarina Loss is just like, her heart reminds me so much of like Tessa, but even more so like when it comes to like wanting to serve others. Like she has like this endless life, and you know she could really kind of do whatever she wants, but yet she consistently over and over chooses to serve others and chooses to help people in need and help people less fortunate than her. And I just think that's so admirable, because like, yeah, maybe I can give up like an afternoon to go like volunteer like my local like, you know, soup kitchen, but like she literally gives up her whole entire life to that. And it's just kind of, I don't know, I just think both of them are kind of special to me in their own way. And I really like both of them.
I totally agree. What did you guys think?
I think that it's just, they're just the constant things. I think Katarina more so as well, after obviously what does happen to Ragnar, but they're just the constant things in his life, and they're the people that he's known kind of throughout. And when different people leave and he has these breakups with people and then not part of when like what happened with Will and stuff, like they are the two that are constantly there with him, and I just love their whole relation. They're hilarious when they're together.
So funny. Ragnar is so done with them 24/7.
What's the line when he's trying to learn how to play the is it triangle? I can never remember. And they say about what it sounds like, and he's just like, you're just devastated that you don't have the skills like a true artiste like me. And just like the whole relationship is just humorous and funny and just being done with each other, but then it's so supportive as well, especially kind of with Katarina and how she is and her whole like personality and demeanor and stuff. She's just really understanding, and I think there is this humor there and this kind of, they make fun of each other and they're completely done with Magnus, and like he drives them mad, but I think if he really, really needed them, he could go to either of them and they're there and they'll support him. So I love them. Like Katarina is one of the most underrated characters in the whole series. She is just, I love her so much. I could write an essay about why she is absolutely brilliant.
Have you started reading Ghosts of the Shadow Market yet?
Yeah.
Did you read A Deeper Love?
Yes.
Oh yeah, because that's for those of you who don't know, in the Ghost of the Shadow Market series, there is one story that follows Tessa and Katerina Loss, and I just read it today, and like I have a more renewed appreciation for Katerina Loss.
It's like I heard a thing once where they said that just like Magnus and Tessa go. I know this isn't Katrina, but like Magnus and Tessa have like tea and gossip. Like,
yeah.
like that's what I need. That's what I need a series of novellas about. Really, to be honest, just Magnus and his friends. Just...
Yes. Emma, how do you feel about our two recurring warlocks?
I love them. I love that they're like Magnus's found family, especially when he's like constantly thinking back to his biological family or his stepdad who like did not treat him that well, and then he has his demon father who also doesn't treat him well. So it's good that he has his like warlock buddies to keep him company and be there for him. And then I also love the relationship between Ragnar and Raphael. That's hilarious.
Yeah, that was the one thing I was gonna add.
I think Ragnar and Katerina, they can like really understand Magnus in a way that no one else can, because I think all three of them kind of have the common feeling of like they shouldn't be there, because it's like, oh, like this like demon came and like, you know, seduced my mother, and like now I'm here and I'm like the you know, and so I kind of feel like because the three of them, they all live like a lot of time, and they all feel kind of like they don't belong, and so it's just kind of like the band of misfits just like grouping together. I don't know, they're just like so precious, all three of them.
While we're on the topic of Ragnar, do you want to hear my really weak theory?
I do. Yeah. I want to hear it all.
I have a very weak theory that Ragnar might not actually be dead, because as we have learned in Cassie Clare's book, there's no body, there's probably no death. And so the reason that there's other evidence from future books, evidence, I use that term really loosely, because I like 90% of me is like, this isn't true, but 10% of me is like, but it could be. Because in the course of True Love and First Dates, this takes place, I'm assuming, there's no date on it, but I'm assuming it's like during City of Ashes, because it's after Magnus and Alec have met.
There's a timeline on Cassie's website, and it says that it takes place after City of Bones, but before City of Ashes.
Okay, interesting. So, also keep in mind that like the span of the Mortal Instruments is really short. So like City of Bones is like a week, City of Ashes is like another week. And so there's this one quote that says, if Ragnar was around, he would have laughed, but Ragnar had disappeared to a spa in Switzerland for a series of complicated facials meant to bring out his green complexion. So like that could be just like a Cassie Clare like funny anecdote, or I'm like, maybe he just wasn't in Idris around the time of City of Glass, and it's possible that he wasn't dead, and Magnus is the only one that knows because he covered for him when Sebastian and Clary were there. So I'm like, maybe, like a little bit, maybe he's not dead. But like,
I like it. I like it. Don't be discouraged. Dream on. Like, you know, I want Ragnar to be back.
It wouldn't surprise me at all. Like, there's no, unless you literally see it, like you literally see like the body, you see this person is 100% dead. You don't know. Like she just does anything. Like I have theories of things, and I'm always like, oh, this could happen, but I still read the book, and I'm just surprised the whole time. Like I'm just, even with things I thought were going to happen. So I would not be surprised if he just appeared somewhere.
Yeah, I will return to this theory in another future live show when we will have other evidence to talk about. But I'm like, maybe. All right, I think we can squeeze in a few more questions here. So if you guys have any, throw them on in the chat below, or if any of my lovely co-hosts have a topic they want to discuss, go for it. What did you guys think about Magnus's voicemail? That's a good question.
Well, killed me. It like literally ruined my life. I didn't know it was going to be in there. I didn't know it was in the English edition of the book.
Oh, really?
And then I just turned and I was like, the voicemail of Magnus Bane. Oh, what's this? And then like turned and I was like, oh, it's this. Right. Okay, then I'm gonna cry now. Honestly, like it's a nightmare. There's like a bit of that page in my book which is like weak because I cried like onto the page.
Oh my god, it's so funny.
It's just because I was like not expecting it, and I just feel really sorry for Alec. Like I know where Alec did wrong, and I totally get it, and Magnus was completely justified in what he did, but it was just so emotional because you can just feel like the desperation in those voicemails of this. He knows what he did and he's really trying to make it right, but he doesn't know how because it's his first relationship and it's his first time with anything like that. So you can just hear that desperation in the voicemails, and it just broke my heart. Like it just ruined my life.
See, it's funny.
Sorry.
Oh no.
No, you're gonna say.
It's funny to me that you remember like the desperation and the sadness, because what I remember most of this is Isabel like all these hysterical voices, like how she's like, okay, like there's one where she's like pretending to be someone else and it's like, I'm gonna fight you, and she's like, okay, fine, it's Isabel, call me back, bye. It's just so funny. I love how protective Isabel Lightwood is over her big brother, and I just think that like this section of it is just like a really great representation of Izzy's character, because like he is so determined to like make this right because she wants Alec to stop hurting, but she's also just like so hysterical and flamboyant, and I love it. I think it's so funny.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I was thinking, because when I read it, it's just really funny to watch like the the progression of how all of them handle it, and how Isabel's like tying all these people in. And there's like this one part where she's like, I low-key, like kind of like how you have your Wagner theory, I kind of have this theory that like Chairman Meow and Church are like going off on like, and they're actually in love and they're going off on these little adventures. I think I got that from the City of Bones live show or whatever. But I was like, so when she's talking and she's like, hey, this is like Church speaking, and I think he's in love with Chairman Meow, and I just need them to be together, so please stop keeping them apart. I'm like, I knew it. Like,
that's great. What was the question? I don't even remember.
How did you feel?
The voicemails. Emma, what did you think about the voicemails?
They were so sad. I felt so bad for Alec. I really sympathize with him because, like, who hasn't been the super insecure person in a relationship? And obviously, like, Magnus has so much more experience than Alec, and Alec is, like, insecure about being gay and insecure about being in a relationship for the first time and being in a relationship with a centuries-old warlock. And I just feel so bad for him. And so just hearing all of the voice messages was rough. But I love how protective Izzy is. And I thought the part where she roped Maya into calling was really funny.
Oh, yeah.
Maya's like, for the record, I don't think this is going to work.
Maya always staying grounded. And the other, like, I've been marking my copies of The Mortal Instruments during this year along with book darts. So I have all these little page flags when I have things. And the one thing that I marked during the voicemail of Magnus Bane was that Mayrus called.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't remember if she says that like Isabel is doing it, is making her. I don't think so because I'm looking at it right now. But the fact that she called for Alec, I think, shows that she's like really trying to be a supportive mother. Like, you know, she very easily could have not done it. Again, I don't think Alec actually asked anyone, so it makes me think that she did it on her own volition. And I think that's really important because Mayrus is another character that we're just like, oh, she's such a bitch. But like, she was trying, and it's expressed in that voicemail. And I think that's a really significant moment of the story.
Yeah. And I think it's a significant thing, like when you see kind of Alec's growth in like a short space of time as well, because those voicemails, obviously they're not really, really far apart, but they're not like every day. And that last one where he's like, I won't call anymore, I'm really sorry. And, like, you just see like that, and you see like he's realized, and like that's the last one as well. You don't have any more of Isabel like afterwards. You see like he's made this decision, he's realized what's happened, and he's just kind of like, yeah, like I won't call anymore, like, you know, I'm really sorry. And like that sort of, I went into like when I reread the Mortal Instruments series when City of Heavenly Fire starts, I kind of had those voicemails in my head now, and it just made it more sort of emotional because you see Alec's kind of growth within that space of time as well.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds terrible, but I feel like that breakup was the best thing to happen to Alec because he grew so much from it. And now Magnus and Alec are just so healthy and happy. And it's so wonderful. For those of you who haven't continued on with the rest of the books and you love Malik, you are in for a treat. But yeah, I think it's so sweet. And I also love that, like, just like another note is that like this isn't like a Malik story. Like this is about Magnus himself. Because again, you know, I think it's very easy for people to see Magnus as Malik. And I like that only the last like 3 stories have anything to do with Alec, and or there's in the one where like Alec is like a kid.
Yeah.
That was so funny. But oh my god, it's so weird thinking about Magnus dating someone he like interacted with as a child. Wow. Okay, that must have been interesting. But I like that it's so much more about Magnus as a person in his experiences as opposed to his relationship, which I think he unfortunately just gets snubbed as like just being part of that relationship a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Which I think is so awesome. All right, so I think that really wraps up this live show. Thank you so much to all of you guys who participated and watched and asked your questions, because I've had so much fun discussing this book with you guys. And of course, thank you to my lovely co-hosts for joining me and sharing your wonderful insight. If you want to check out any of their links, they were in the description below. I totally recommend you go follow them. The next live show will be coming very soon, and it is Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy. So get to reading. We will have a live show very soon, which I will again announce on Facebook and Twitter. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon for the next live show. Bye.
Bye.